Today we will be continuing Story of Us by Seriously the Marauders. Chapter 3. Hockey Season, Week 3. The weekends home with family are James's favorite time. There's no question about it, especially with the recent way school and hockey have been going. It was much needed. The drive home with his coach did not get any more comfortable after he'd recovered from his panic attack, however. They sat for the remaining hours with nothing but the radio to fill the silence, and the static as they drove through rural areas. James slouched in the passenger seat, staring at the passing trees as she drove. The air was thick with unspoken words. He had already apologized twice for making things hard, but McGonagall had brushed it off both times. Now the quiet between them was heavier than the unspoken words on his tongue. Almost worse than confession. "James," his coach said softly, breaking the silence after they'd reached halfway through the ride. "Yeah?" he replied without looking at her. "You know, it's okay to talk about what happened back there. I'm not going to push you, but I hope you know I'm here for you if you need to." James stiffened, his fingers curling into the edge of his sweatshirt. "I'm fine, Minnie. Really. Just tired." She gave a small sigh, but didn't press further, switching the radio station to get some reception. The upbeat pop song filling the car only made James feel worse. He leaned his head against the window, watching the world blur. "I'll be fine," he muttered as much to himself as her. "Jamie!" His mom's voice was full of warmth as she pulled him into a tight hug at the door. The smell of her lavender perfume hit him like a wave of nostalgia, but it also made him feel like a fraud. "Hi, Mom," he said, forcing a smile. "Missed you." She held him at arm's length, studying him like she always did. "You look tired. Everything okay at school?" "Great, actually," he lied with practiced ease. "Just a lot of late nights with homework and hockey." His dad ruffled his hair as he walked by, carrying a tray of snacks. "Hope you didn't give Minerva here too much of a hard time on the drive down, or practice today." James laughed nervously. He had most certainly given her a hard time. She shouldn't be dealing with this at all. "Oh, not a chance. You have a lovely boy," she replied casually. He could feel Minerva's eyes on him as she carried his bag inside. After intense attempts of James insisting he can do it himself, but he avoided her gaze. The next morning, Sirius arrived, bounding out of Effie and Monty's car with his usual energy obtained from his weekends at the Potters. "James!" Sirius grinned, pulling James into a bear hug. "Can't believe you roped me into celebrating your mom's birthday, then couldn't wake up in time to get me from the train." "Mom likes you more anyway," James said, relieved by his friend's casual tone. The day was filled with laughter, Sirius effortlessly charming James's family while James pretended everything was fine. At one point, Sirius nudged him while they were setting the table. "You've been quiet," Sirius said, his voice low enough that no one else could hear. "Everything cool?" James hesitated for half a second before flashing a grin. He hated how Sirius could read him, despite James never revealing anything about his usual level of anxiety. "Yeah, just tired. You know how it is." Sirius tilted his head, unconvinced, but let it drop. By Sunday evening, James was back in Minnie's car, his stomach tightening as they neared the boarding school gates. "You boys ready to go back?" Minnie asked, her tone casual but her concern evident. "Of course," James said quickly. "Why wouldn't I be?" She didn't answer, figuring it was more of a rhetorical question, though James was genuinely asking, what could she see through? That night, lying in his bed in the dim dorm room, James stared at the ceiling when Remus and Peter were still in the bathroom. Sirius stood at James's bedside for another minute. "You would tell me if there was something going on, right? With the team or anything?" He could still hear the laughter and taunts from his teammates in his head. Their words like static he couldn't tune out. But he wasn't going to tell anyone. Not McGonagall, not his parents, not Sirius. Because admitting it felt like losing. And James wasn't sure what he'd do if he let someone in and they couldn't fix it. Of course, mate. But there's nothing worth mentioning. He lied through his teeth. He didn't know if anyone had heard him up in the middle of the night, locking himself in the bathroom, sitting against the door on an average Sunday night. The following day at Gryffindor was pretty good. James felt back to normal, aside from his voice being slightly gone. This happened after all of his panic attacks, for some reason. "Hi, guys," Lily started as everyone sat down at lunch. "Hey," James said. His voice broke mid-word and crackled out. He laughed it off, as they always do, given he lost his voice often. "Wow, Potter, sore throat again?" Mary asked, a Gryffindor practice player. No surprise there. It had been a while, though, right? I feel like it wasn't since the winter. I figured it was seasonal, Remus noted. James almost laughed to himself at that idea. It sort of was seasonal. Seasonal depression. But of course, he couldn't make that joke. "Yeah, I guess it had been. It's fine, it always comes back after a day or so," James choked, and Remus was right. It has been several months since his last one. They all talked throughout the lunch hour. James wouldn't have even remembered his night had he not had to break off every so often to cough or clear his throat, as it went out frequently. "James, you haven't eaten your cold spaghetti. What's the matter?" Frank joked as he gestured to the plate of crappy school food untouched on his tray. "Throat hurts, but it's fine," James mumbled back. "Oh yeah, what was up last night? You busted out of that place, James," Marlene mentioned. Everyone else backed up the realization, and James sighed, knowing he had to give some form of explanation by now. He thought for a moment. The best thing to do was let them know that the Slytherins are treating him like shit. Then just try and seem as unbothered by them as he could with a sore throat that was caused by how bothered he was by them. Either way, at least Marlene will see it sometime this season. She may be oblivious, but she isn't stupid. A new ball of anxiety formed in his stomach. "I had to get away from those guys," James mumbled, looking away from all of them. Didn't want them to say anything else. "What were they saying?" "Oh yeah, you never said what Barty told you during that game." "And what were they going on about in the locker room?" All of the questions at once. James would have turned frantic. But he tried to remember McGonagall's advice, and he slowed himself down. They all stared at him. His knee bounced below the table. He picked his fingers and breathed for a second. "You good, mate?" Sirius asked him. He always knew what was up, but he still didn't know the anxiety part. "They have a nickname they like to use to get under my skin. And then they think I'm gonna crack under pressure, but I won't. I can handle it. I just wish they would drop it already because it's annoying as hell." "Ignore them. We've got you, mate," Frank added, and everyone else agreed. James sighed and tried to feel relief at the support, but then he remembered that they were only supporting him because they didn't know what was actually happening behind closed doors. Then came the Gryffindor game against Hufflepuff. A fairly easy win, the kind that reminded James why he plays hockey. "We should go out for dinner, because we officially have a winning streak. 3 games, 3 wins, Kinsley suggested. Everyone piled into a booth at Honeyduke's, laughing together as James told a story. He didn't very often. He could never hold the conversation up that long, but after such a good day, it was easy. "So Sirius realizes his hockey bag is still in the car, and so are the keys," he says, through laughter. Then he remembers that his trunk is still unlocked, so he climbs into his car, through the trunk, to get in, but then he gets stuck between the trunk and the back seat, so he calls me from his spot, dangling over the seat, to get him unstuck. But as they continue to laugh, at the ending, James's gaze travels across the restaurant. There's another large table, a team, the Slytherins. They're here, celebrating a win. James tried to pull his gaze away before they noticed the Gryffindors, but of course, Regulus happened to look over at the same time. Remus saw James's instant shift and turned to see the team as well. Well, well, well. What do we have here?" Snape started. Braylon, Gryffindor's goalie, stood up and was quickly firing back. James would have been appreciative for the defense against him, but he was just trying to keep himself out of it. Fights happen all the time in hockey. That wasn't the problem. It was the fact that it was the people he hates but used to love, and the people he does love but know will hate him after hearing the other against each other. There was no chance the Slytherins would get out of this without coming after James. James heard the term Jamesy and instantly froze. Nothing good ever followed it. "Hey, not to worry, James. We're handling it," Frank said while he stood next to Kingsley, alongside Marlene and Sirius while the others sat watching. Although it was a nice attempt at making sure James knew they cared after the prior conversation, but it was not how he wanted to handle things. "Not to worry. Next game, it will be pretty clear which one of us is the better team. And just a little hint, it's not going to be the one with Jamesy. Because last time I checked, if you can't make it through a game without a pen... Last time I checked, Mama's boy over here isn't exactly capable either. If we're going to recall on Team USA, let's recall on some things I remember between Regulus and... Regulus jumped forward at James's choice of nickname, and James stumbled back, his team partially holding him back and partially pushing him forward. James regretted it the instant the words left his mouth, but he had been biting those words back for so long he couldn't let the opportunity pass. They finally sat at the ice cream parlor next door. The Slytherins hadn't even gotten their food yet, so they didn't have to worry about being followed. The conversation was back to normal, but Remus had to think about what happened a little more. James shut down what Regulus was saying the second he started a word. All he got out was pan. The word panic began circling around his head. He knew the term panic attack, but surely he was exaggerating it. He didn't actually mean that James Potter had panic attacks, right? Sirius, on the other hand, was looking at James with a new realization. James knew more about their mother. More like Regulus's mother than he'd told. Mama's boy. Mama's boy. The words circled through Regulus's head for long enough, and suddenly he's 2 years younger, at summer camp, just days after opening up to James about some of his parents' problems. The term Mama's boy had been floating around for a few hours ever since Snape and Barty had walked in on James panicking in the locker room. The concerning part was he hadn't told anyone about his situation aside from James. James fucking Potter spread the name, the same boy who would nearly break down every time he missed a shot. And in this rage, he forgets the creator of the name, Jamesy, and why it was invented. Chapter 4. Hockey Season, Week 4. Not long after the run-in at the pizza shop came yet another game against the Slytherins. The Gryffindors sat in the locker room, talking as they suited up, but James was silent. "Potter," Frank began, catching James zoning out and his knee bouncing. "We beat him last time, in the scrimmage. We've got it," the boys replied with agreeing yells. "And I was going to beat them in that trash talk competition, or whatever the hell that was," Kingsley added. "And it's not just Coach Binns tonight, like it's been the last few practices. We have mini coaching, so everything's good for this game," Sirius finished. James smiled at all of his teammates' reassurance. But that also added to the anxiety that they know about what he's going through, which he could not let happen. They're just looking out for him because of the bullies. That's it, James tries to remind himself. As they started on the ice, McGonagall stopped James. "Don't let them get to you. You're stronger than them. And you have a whole team of boys who won't let them get to you." James nodded and caught up to his team without another word. The rink was alive with the sound of blades cutting through ice and the sharp clap of sticks hitting pucks. James skated nervously along the boards, trying to stay invisible. He avoided eye contact with anyone, but specifically Snape, Barty, Evan, and Regulus. He knew they saw him. He knew they were already running through many different ways to get to him. But he just tried to ignore them as he came close to the blue line. "Keep your head up, James," Coach Binns barked. James nodded weakly, gripping his stick tighter. The game was rough, even by their usual standards. One of the Gryffindor's best players on the team, Frank, was skating hard against two of the rival players. James was nearby, originally attempting to get open for a pass, but now he was trying to get away from Evan. James knew he was going to get checked, but he also knew he could avoid it at the last second. But neither James nor Frank had seen that Evan didn't stop when James got away safely. And he continued and ended up ramming into Frank, sending him sprawling onto the ice. James helped him up quickly. It was his fault that he'd gotten hurt. If only he'd taken the check like a man instead of letting Frank do it. They were going to start going after his team, and it was his fault, and it's okay, I'm fine, Frank struggled out, grimacing as he clutched his arm. James took the other shoulder to help him stand, his heart dropping. He skated over to the entrance of the ice, but he already felt the weight of guilt pressing on his chest. He should have taken the check. He should have warned Frank. The coaches blew their whistles, and Frank was helped off the ice, fighting tears. Frank was the strongest player he knew. Seeing him like this was awful. James felt his breath quicken, his chest tightening, his vision blurred, his mind spun in a relentless loop of blame. It's my fault. I couldn't protect my team. If I hadn't been so scared. You okay, Potter? You're not even the one who got hurt, but you look like you're in pain, Remus noted, coming onto the ice to take over for Frank. Fine. The game continued, and James was at face-off again, this time against Evan. Listen, you can hurt me and say whatever shit you want, but you leave Frank and the others out of it, James demanded. Yeah, definitely, Jamesy, Evan muttered back. Once James got the puck, instead of defending him, Evan went to Sirius. Sirius took the puck to the goal, but first, Evan came out and tripped him with his stick. Sirius stumbled forward, losing his hold on his stick and the puck. Sirius was fine right after, but that didn't stop the internal panic inside James. It was his fault. He had to stop them. Hey, James, McGonagall whispered. James snapped out of his thoughts for a moment. He realized he was panting slightly. James, take a breath. James did so and followed his teammates back out on the ice. We have to get more aggressive. They're not going to stop. I know that they don't follow ethics the way that we've all been trained to, but that doesn't mean we can't beat them. We take extra precautions to keep ourselves safe, then we beat them. The Hogwarts team. We've got some games with them next week as well, as on Gryffindor there's another against them. It's going to be a tough one, but it is nowhere out of our abilities. McGonagall explained, and the team left to change. James, his coach, started, but James couldn't have this conversation right now. He left pretending he hadn't heard her. The Gryffindors all returned to the locker room. How's the arm? James asked, masking the anxiety in his voice the best he could as he sat beside Frank. He was still in uniform, but had left after the injury to visit the school hospital wing, and now he returned in a sling. 6 to 8 weeks off. Broke 2 bones, Frank replied with a sigh. He didn't seem mad, necessarily. At least not at James. But the guilt remained as prominent as ever. That sucks, mate. I'm so sorry. James replied. It's okay. Not your fault. And all James could do was turn away to pack his things. He felt like a liar. James, come here, McGonagall called, her voice firm. James walked over, looking down. Listen, James. I think you should talk to Slughorn about your anxiety. I know it doesn't seem like a good thing, but he's noticed, and he can help you with the other team stuff too. He just doesn't realize what's going on. No, please, McGonagall, I can manage it. No one has to know. Fine, but your mother's worried. Don't let her be right. Don't let it get as bad as it did. We're all here for you. The team too, even if they don't know. They know you need them. James was instantly set off in a mood. He didn't want to need help. And he definitely was not telling his coach about his mental health, not Slughorn of all coaches. I won't, he insisted. It feels like it already has, Minnie admitted. James shook his head violently, backing away as they continued to walk. No, it's fine. I'm fine. You're not fine, Coach's voice rose. Though it wasn't angry, it was desperate. I've seen the way those boys treat you. It's not right. You have to let us help you before someone else gets hurt. No, James shouted, his voice cracking. I can handle it. If I tell, they'll just make it worse. The argument carried across the lot, primarily empty, so James didn't notice Regulus standing near the entrance, laughing slightly, seeing his outburst. Regulus's smirk faded as he caught James's words. I can handle it. They'll just make it worse. The phrase hit him like a slap. Memories surged unbidden. 2 years ago, he remembered the way James would shake before games, his breathing uneven as he pulled his jersey over his head. Regulus hadn't truly understood it back then, but he remembered now how James would brush off anyone who asked if he was okay, refusing to admit it when the pressure was too much. But Reg had just figured that was James Potter. He shouldered more than he should have, but he always came out okay. And before the argument, before the hatred, when he wasn't one of the causes, he tried to help. Leave me alone, was all he'd gotten as an answer, but that wasn't what he wanted. It wasn't what he needed. When it finally clicked that Regulus was the best person to help, likely the only person to help as well, he had jumped in and stopped it. After helping a few, he had suggested telling others, if not the coaches, about what exactly he was going through. James had declined, very harshly, and that was the last time he helped him. Regulus's stomach churned. He didn't like James, not now anyway, but watching the scene unfold in front of him felt wrong. For a fleeting moment, he felt the weight of his own actions. He hadn't just stood by when the teasing continued, he joined in. It was unfair for James to get angry over the suggestion, but Regulus knew he'd gotten angry when James suggested telling someone about his mother. Then James stopped listening to his problems. Were the two situations any different? A car trunk slammed. James was spiraling as he pushed his hockey bag into the car, his voice breaking as he shouted at Coach McGonagall. Regulus didn't think anyone could just yell at a coach like that. A mother figure, even. Just drop it, okay? It's my problem. No, James, Coach said, voice softer now. It's not just your problem. You're part of this team, and when you hurt, we all hurt. You've got to trust us enough to help you. James looked away, his eyes stinging. Regulus turned back to the bench beside the doorway, gripping his stick tightly. The memory of James's trembling hands and shallow breathing wouldn't leave his mind. For the first time, he wondered if his part in all of this had been more damaging than all of the others combined.